Good afternoon and welcome to Talent and Growth, our roundtable webinar series. We are very much underway with these. Now I'm back from paternity leave. This is our second one back. Last week, of course, we had how to get it right with diversity hiring. Really good feedback from that. So thanks to everyone who tuned into that one. And today we are talking about optimizing employee experience for greater retention. And we know it's an interesting market right now, lots of challenges, lots of opportunities, but retention is absolutely key because we know that it costs more to lose a good person than to even not to find the right person when you're hiring. So this is a really, really key topic, and I'm really happy to have such a panel today. And so we'll go to maybe some introductions. So Isabel, welcome back to the webinar series. Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro into who you are and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me back, Paul. My name is Isabel Parland. I work in the people and talent team at BVNK, which is a global payments business. I've been with the business now for 2 years, really helped scale the team from, when I joined, it was 20 people and now we're over 200. So really scaled relatively quickly over the last sort of 2 years and helped navigate all of the sort of pros and challenges that go with that.
Fantastic, thanks Isabel. Gareth, over to you. Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the episode, Paul. My name is Gareth, and I currently work as talent acquisition manager for a fintech company called Tide. Tide is a fintech business that we're currently growing quite a lot at the moment, mostly around EMEA as well as India. But also got experience working at Stripe for 2 years prior to joining Tide, and Checkout.com, so another payments fintech company. So got experience working for a number of different companies, scaling and also managing teams. So yeah.
Fantastic, thanks Gareth. And Rashad, last but not least, please do give us a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, I'm Rashad Price. I head up the people function for Nomo Fintech. It's a digital Islamic app, and it services the whole of the GCC. We built the fastest digital Islamic bank of its type within 9 months over 37 different countries, obviously scaling challenges and growth. We just launched UAE yesterday, and there are expansion plans for the rest of the GCC. We're currently in Kuwait as well. And I worked for the group, actually, technically for 10 years, but for Nomo Fintech, coming up for 2 years in July. So, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you so much. We've got a bit of a fintechy theme today, so if you're listening or viewing and you happen to work for a fintech, then this is going to be right up your alley. But also, I think these businesses have gone through a lot in terms of hiring, looking after their people, so hopefully the content in this will be relevant to anybody, no matter what business you're in. And Rashad, look, we were throwing around a few topic ideas. We obviously wanted to do this together, but I think it was actually yourself, who coined this title, which was optimizing employee experience for greater retention. Do you want to just kind of give us a definition of what that is to you, first of all, then we'll kick off with the questioning?
Yeah, I think as Gareth and probably Isabel knows, I mean, the market's really, really tight, and it's quite buoyant as well. And for us, what we've always tried to do is encapsulate the culture and make sure that people look more than just like the package at the overall benefits. And we don't want people to feel like it's part of a family, because it's not a family, but we want people to have a sense of belonging and a sense of inclusion and a sense of having a voice and building something for the future. And that, I think, drives, because our tech stack is very, very attractive to a lot of the techies. It also drives us to give a full package that's not just pounds and pence. It's more than that. And I think that's enabled us to actually retain people. I mean, we've only got a turnover of 8% in a market that's averaging 25 to 27. And so we've done something, but it's an ongoing journey, and it's a real battle, especially with the cost of living crisis in the UK.
Yeah, 100%, and that's definitely something to shout about. A retention rate of 8%, so that's great work. And how do you effectively measure employee satisfaction and engagement in your organisation, and how do you use that data to continue to evolve it? As you said, it's a journey, isn't it?
Is it directed at me?
Yeah, back at you. Sorry, back to you.
No, that's fine. We do quarterly surveys, and we've got 14 variables that we measure across, and then we actually do per vertical breakdowns. It's all anonymized, and this gives us like tangible things to physically work on. However, to supplement that, we have a session every 2 weeks, all hands. It's sort of like a town hall, and we have Slido where any question that's top of heart, top of mind is addressed by our CEOs and the senior leadership team. So we pride ourselves on being agile and addressing it very quickly. And just a tangible example where obviously we work in a number of different time zones, and a lot of people just were not getting that head down space. So we created things like meeting free zones, and we've done a lot of things like that. Looking at hybrid options where Wednesday is the best day for anyone to come into the office. So these were like tangible things that actually came out of these surveys. So it's about getting the feedback and working on that feedback very quickly. And we can't address all, but we try and address the things that make a difference to the hearts and minds of our people first.
Yeah, love it. And look, you don't need to list all 14, but what types of things are you measuring in those surveys?
So we do everything from transparency, communication, just stress, well-being, mental health. There's a whole variety.
Fantastic. Isabel, if I ask you a similar question, kind of how are you measuring that satisfaction and engagement for your business?
We actually do something very similar to Richard. We also have all hands every 2 weeks. We also have Slido. That seems to be common. And we have found it sort of invaluable, that anonymous feature of really people being able to open up and ask questions that they might sort of be nervous to ask managers, or sort of open sort of on ask on an open forum. And, that we do find that there are common themes that come up off the back of that. So we've often found that, we've sent out a survey after all hands to really, we've noticed a theme, we've picked up on it, and we have sent out a survey to really get a better understanding of the feeling and sort of where the problems are and what we can do to help. An example of that would be in South Africa, we have something called load shedding or power cuts. There was clearly some pain points around that and the hybrid working. So we sent out a survey to see, what we could do in order to help and assist staff there. And then from that, we were able to now action and sort of offer UPSs and stuff. So that's really something that, we've been able to do. But I think that's quite a reactive way of sort of looking at employee satisfaction. I mean, you're reacting to certain things that people have said. I think, something that we have done as a people and talent team is really looking forward to sort of changes that are going to be happening in the next 6 to 8 months, or even sooner, the next month, and really sort of thinking about, okay, what challenges people are going to face with this, sort of getting a feel before it actually happens, and being able to address these issues before they become a problem. And, as we all know, in the fintech industry, things are changing all of the time. And so it is really important to also be sort of proactive and, preempt where people might feel uncomfortable or nervous or anything like that. And then sort of sending pulse checks out within teams off the back of that too.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, it's not just exclusive to fintech. I think everything's changing very quickly, whatever industry or field you're in right now. Just in terms of the all hands, you're doing them every 2 weeks. What does the structure of those meetings look like?
So we have all of our executives present their sort of review from the last 2 weeks. We have them every 2 weeks religiously. So executives sit there and present all the data that we have from the last 2 weeks. And then at the end, we always leave sort of 20 minutes to answer questions through Slido. And then the executives answer them directly. And that's also nice. You're hearing information from the horse's mouth itself. It means a lot. And then from that, we then sort of have Notion and jot down the answers to these questions so that people can refer back to them. Like, it's one thing, I think, listening to them, it's another thing sort of reading them, absorbing them later on down the line. So we have that all noted down on the Notion page, so people can refer back to that as well. But it's great. We love all hands. I look forward to them.
Is it? Is there quite a strong? Is there kind of an open overview of where the business is at, good or bad, in terms of numbers and figures and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. That's something that we have had to seriously prioritize over the last year to year and a half, is really making sure that all of our staff know the good and the bad, and feel completely in the loop. They feel as though we're not hiding anything. They know what everybody knows, and that's been instrumental in helping staff feel sort of involved in the process, in sort of everything that's going on, and secure in their role and in their job, and really get a good understanding of sort of where the business is at and what needs to happen over the next sort of 2 weeks or quarter, or whatever we're discussing.
I think I'd also I think I was just jumping quick and agree with everything the panel is saying, but also just mention that I think also when presenting these results, it's quite key to not just focus on the negatives. Like, I think some companies can look at these results and present them in all hands and just focus on the negatives and areas that you want to improve on. But I think it's equally important to also show what is the company doing well, like what are we doing very well in, and to also kind of shine a light on those positives to encourage people to continue to do that behavior, or for the business to continue to operate in that fashion. So yeah, that's just something I just wanted to just quickly add on to that point.
Yeah, I think it's about balance, isn't it? I think one thing I think if anything, and what I've seen before is perhaps in my experience, and this is working more on the agency side, is that perhaps businesses have been a bit too optimistic when presenting data to their staff, and actually trying to protect them from what's really going on. For me, I think the data I've seen and in my personal experience is that even if it's bad news, sharing it is always going to be better, because it can lead to less surprises down the line if the tough times do come, and secondly, probably more importantly, is that it creates camaraderie, and people do appreciate it. Even if it's bad news, they appreciate being brought in on it, and that's what creates that we're all in this together. And I've certainly seen that before. Gareth, is there anything else in terms of, I suppose, managing that employee satisfaction and engagement that you've done at Tide or previously to that you want to kind of chip in with as well?
I mean, Rashad and Isabel pretty much covered it. I mean, in companies that I've worked at, we've done pulse surveys, kind of assessing people's satisfaction or employee satisfaction over time. Instead of doing them on like a quarterly basis or even on a monthly basis, I think it was Isabel who mentioned pulse surveys, which in companies that I've worked at have worked really well, because it sort of sends a couple of prompted messages out to employees to respond to, and I think that you get a better understanding of how an employee is feeling throughout their whole life cycle or lifespan at the company. Whereas if you do it like on a quarterly basis or even a monthly basis, an event could have happened that has maybe caused that employee to answer that question incredibly positively, or incredibly negatively. But if you do pulse surveys where you're getting that indication on a regular basis throughout, it kind of gives you a bit more of a holistic view on how that employee is feeling about the company. So yeah, definitely I would say pulse surveys, presenting in all hands meetings, also as the panel covered. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we look at learning and development, so for me, when clients or partners ask me what is it that candidates want right now, and I say everything. They want it all. They want a high salary, they want remote working, they want progression, and they want L&D. So Gareth, if I stay with you, what role does continuous learning and development play in creating a positive employee experience that for you've seen can help boost retention and performance?
Yeah, well, I think continuous learning and development, I think, really kind of boils down to how much the business is investing in that employee or in their employers, in their staff. Investing in someone's learning and development will lead to their skills improving. They'll be able to tackle more complex problems, be able to potentially have a greater impact within the business, add more value to the business, and that kind of drives their own career growth. and so that also has a knock-on effect on their confidence, their satisfaction on their role within the business. The company is investing in me. I'm giving a lot of impact and value to the business, and my career is growing. And then naturally, as you developing and you're improving your skill set, and albeit the right culture and the right environments in place, it also empowers employees to try new ideas, and experiment and innovate. So I think it plays a crucial role in having that, giving employees the chance to grow their careers, improve their skill set, build that confidence, tackle more complex problems, and have a bigger impact on the business.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Rashad, what about yourself? For you, how important is that L&D piece?
It's huge. I mean, my background comes from talent. So I did talent for the parent company for 8 years. And we take a very very structured approach. So we have a career path or a career ladder, and then we linked it to a learning ladder. And then this actually feeds into our succession map. So it becomes very clear that people know how they can articulate their move up, or vertically or horizontally. Because for us, we're also realistic. We're not expecting people to stay with us forever, but we want to give opportunities internally where we can, as much as possible. So whatever we can do to do that, we do. And we aid that with a combination of a learning allowance that's part of their benefits. And there's a certain limit on it. However, that is justifiable. They can go higher than that. And then we've got electronic platforms that we give them access to, Pluralsight, Udemy. And then on top of that, conferences, seminars, and workshops, and then group training. And we've also done a lot of lunch and learns internally, because we've got a lot of expertise internally and leverage that a lot. And it's a really popular function for us. People attend like over 100 per session when we run them, because you're hearing from an expert giving their insights, and it's tangible and it's workable, and they can walk away with it and actually implement it immediately. So it's a huge driver. It's a critical driver for us now that we've sort of scaled a little bit more.
Is this something that's come up for you in those pulse surveys as being a key element of why people want to stay in the business?
So for them, it's more the tech challenge of what they're building. But if you look at that a little bit deeper, it's basically the tech stack and the training we give them on the tech stack as well. So it's interrelated. It's not directly the same learning and development, but it's more the challenge of the build.
Got you. Absolutely. And Isabel, in terms of that L&D piece?
Yeah, I mean, we found sort of something slightly different. The majority, I mean, we do offer sort of a learning and development budget as well, and that's really important. But I would say the majority of our learning and development happens organically. Like, our business is really growing so much and so quickly that everyone's exposed to different situations every single day. And that is just sort of natural learning and development. The business is growing at a very fast rate, and people are having to learn and develop every single day to be able to keep up with the growth of the business and really, the way that their role is naturally progressing. I think as a business, and I think this is definitely something that we are very aware of, and something we're really working on, is making sure that we're supporting staff through that growth, whether that be sort of offering courses, like, for example, at the moment our finance team are going through like expert Excel courses, or our sales team are going through medic courses, to make sure that we are continuously like expanding hard skills. But I think that the majority of our growth does happen organically as the business is growing in their day-to-day, being exposed to different situations and different problems, learning from them, and then taking that into the next situation or the next problem.
Yeah, I can echo the same. I mean, if you looked at it, probably 70% of our learning happens on the job. 20% is probably like from stretch assignments or mentoring and coaching, and 10% would be probably formal. So it's very much the same.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then, Isabel, if I stay with you, is there anything, I suppose, particularly innovative, or anything that you or your in the business are proud of that your organisation has implemented to optimise that employee experience during what, as we would agree, is a bit of a volatile world out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I actually sort of discussed this question quite extensively with my team as well. I would say sort of, something that we do that's maybe, quite unconventional is, being transparent isn't, everyone has to be transparent, but I think we are so transparent that it might be unconventional. In our all hands, I've said it already that our executives give the sort of the good and the bad, but they really do. We know sort of the volumes, the revenue, everything that's pumping through the business every day, and sort of on a weekly basis. And I think, when you're going from sort of a startup to a scale up, that can be quite, it's not always the case. And I think, there's always going to be challenges faced. It's not all sunshines and rainbows going from the startup to the scale up. And often executives are nervous to give those numbers because they're worried that it's going to sort of put staff off. But what we've really found is that having this sort of completely transparent approach to things is that it's not only motivated our employees to sort of do better and but really work together. And we have a fantastic culture of really working cross collaboratively across the board on everything. And I think that's where it stems from, is that, every 2 weeks our executives sit there and really talk about what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, where the bugs are, or whatever it is, and how are we going to address those as a BVNK team rather than like a dev team or a commercial team or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I would say I haven't ever seen sort of a business be really so transparent. But I actually, it's something that our executives were umming and ahhing about when we first started thinking about it. But I've only seen amazing results from it. And I would say it's really brought us together as a team.
Thanks for sharing that, Isabel. Fantastic. If you don't mind, I think there's a bit of static on the line. I'm getting something coming through. So if you don't mind, guests, if you could just put yourselves on mute unless I direct the question to you, that should stop that. That's all right. But not you, Rashad. Not you, Gareth, because I wanted to go to you next. Apologies. Gareth, anything innovative that stood out for you in Tide or anywhere else that's worked?
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to my mind was around flexibility. So obviously being in a market where there's so much volatility, so much uncertainty, it can put a lot of stress on folks, especially when they don't know what's going on, which is why I completely agree with Isabel's point about the transparency and the communication, because it really gives that certainty, or a bit more certainty for people. But I certainly think flexibility and doing things around making it more flexible for people to work at the business, so that they're able to tackle personal as well as professional responsibilities, I think goes a long way to optimize employee experience and increase retention. And something in particular that's not just Tide, but in other companies that I've worked at, allowing folks to work from other countries around the world has really been something that I think a lot of employees have appreciated. So giving them the opportunity to go and work from another country for a given period of time, and then obviously having to go back to their original place of work. So I'm from South Africa. I've got all my family are still in South Africa, and so I've had the opportunity to go back and actually work from South Africa for a given period of time to be closer to family, and still work and tackle my professional responsibilities. And I think that goes a long way, and that's something that came to mind, which companies could probably look into.
Yeah, it's a great offering, and I think it's really good the business is doing that. And if you look at any data from your Hired or your Workable or your Glassdoor, that flexibility piece is right up there. And actually, I'm seeing more and more companies now on job adverts singing about the fact that it will allow you to go and work in another country for up to 3 months, is usually what I see. So I think it's absolutely a really good sell right now. And I think actually if companies aren't doing that, in the next kind of 12, 18, 24 months, they may start falling behind. It's going to become a normal part of the benefits package. So thanks for sharing that, Gareth. And Rashad, finally, last but not least, just on that question with yourself, any kind of innovations that spring out to you?
I think it's just echoing what Isabel said on transparency. I've never worked in a company where it's been so transparent before. so everyone knows exactly where you stand. And flexibility, I think, like, we echoing what Gareth said as well, we actually only have 1 day in the office, and we are flexible on that, but depending on needs. However, what we've also done is we've given people the option to move to the UAE as well. Obviously, there's tax benefits for that. There's not obviously open to everyone, so that cross movement across has been something else that's been quite innovative. I think the other thing is our degree of personalization. We've been very much like in touch with everyone. So when there's engagements, it's like our CEO knows to recognize it. When there's been like a kid that's been born or anything. So it's very like personalized. And I've never seen that depth of personalization within a company as well. And look, it's because we're relatively small, but it has created sort of like everyone knows everything about everyone, and they're part of that journey. So it's part of their career as well as their personal lives as well. And I think that makes us very special. So yeah, I think that would probably be the key thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, we're talking about, I said the top things people are looking for, like the flexibility and the salaries and the L&D or whatnot, but people really appreciate it when they get that message from a CEO or congratulations from a senior person in the business. It really does hit home. It's not necessarily a tangible thing you're going to put in the benefits package, but it matters. So the more you can do that, the better. Okay, we've got a question here. It's just come through on the chat. So let me just pop it up there. It's from Luke Slaney. How you doing, Luke? So do all parts of the business provide an update, or is it specific areas? So I suppose we're looking at the all hands there. So Isabel, I'll start with you for that, if you want just explaining.
Absolutely. So our executives do give a high-level overview in each department. So whether that be like our CFO or our CRO or our CEO, they all give highlights of sort of the business over the last 2 weeks or their department over the last 2 weeks. But then we do sort of each all hands, we do pick sort of one department to really dive a bit deeper and maybe talk about specific projects that they're going through, or anything that might be going on in the team, or really it can be something informal, really giving more background into the team as it is at the moment, if it's grown or anything like that. So every all hands we get an overview from all departments, but we usually have 1 or 2 departments that go into more detail.
Thank you, Isabel. Rashad, is it similar for you?
No, ours slightly different. So our structure for all hands, we actually have a random DJ generator per all hands. So anyone in the company, it's actually like selected, they become the DJ. So they open and anyone could be the MC. So they facilitate that session. And then we open for suggestions from the floor. So it's all driven by business. So these are presentations. It could be from partnerships. It could be from, let's say, marketing, or could be from HR. So we have 1 to 2 presentations, but we do always have the CEO update, gives a general overview of where we're sitting from a revenue, performance, etc. And then we welcome all new joiners as well. And then obviously we go into Slido for that last portion. But yeah, everyone actually has the floor if they're wanting to present something to the wider audience. But we also do pair it with a general business overview as well. So yeah.
I like that. Thank you so much, Rashad. Luke, thanks for the question. Gareth, I'm going to go on to the next question with yourself. So how can HR and talent acquisition professionals create personalised career development plans that cater to employee needs and aspirations? What works for you, do you think?
So I think when it comes to building these personalised career development plans, I think it's important that you obviously identify when you're working with employees, you're identifying what their goals are as an employee, like what is it that they want to achieve in terms of their career, and aligning that to obviously the role. So doing this through your one-to-ones with members of your team, performance evaluations, surveys, as we discussed earlier. And then sort of using that to then identify, what are the skill gaps that they have, using competency frameworks, which Rashad spoke about earlier on this episode, and then identifying, what skill gaps this person has, and then how can we, as manager and employee, start working together to close those gaps. I think that's kind of all really important, to be able to set that up from the ground, and then creating a plan around that. So will they need any formal training? Do they need? Is there a mentorship program in place where they can mentor others within the business? Maybe they simply just need to shadow someone within the team to be able to learn those skills and close that skill gap. But I think the most important thing throughout all that is, as a leader or a manager, of looking after that employee or leading that employee, is that you are providing that constant support and being engaging throughout that whole experience, and making sure that through your check-ins that they're making progress and that they are moving closer and closer towards those goals. So setting something like that up for every single employee is what's key. And as again what Rashad said earlier, I think gone are the days where people will spend sort of 10, 15 years at a business. A lot of people spend a shorter time at a business, and then they move on to new challenges or want to experience new cultures or new environments. And so it's even having that conversation, and very open and transparent conversation about, what is it that you want to achieve whilst you're at Tide, or what do you want to achieve whilst you're at this particular company, and working towards achieving those things. So that's what I would say. And also, like, not being afraid to adjust. I think, again, going to what Isabel mentioned earlier, like, when you're scaling businesses, things often change, things often develop. So being able to also have that area of adjusting those goals that you set, and I think that's really important also.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And I think, career development paths are really crucial for retention, but also really important for attraction as well. I think people want to know what the job is after the job when you're going to them to approach them to hire for your business. So, yeah, absolutely agree with everything you're saying. Rashad, in terms of the career development plans, talk to me about that.
Yeah, we follow the process, like, for performance management as well, that it's about quality conversations. So we have a learning and development team, and we check in with people once a month, and we see where they're at, what they need, and then we do sessions with the management within that area as well. But ultimately, it's about their dialogue. It's about understanding their thoughts, their aspirations, where they're wanting to get to, and also what's realistically possible in the current setup. I mean, we have also changed and grown in certain areas, and like Gareth said, it gives opportunities for people to try new skill sets and get involved. But it's just about people being vocal enough to say exactly what they want and articulate that, and also being open to opportunities that come through. But for us, it's about that constant dialogue.
Yeah, with you. Isabel, anything to add on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a learning and development department. We place quite a lot of this emphasis on managers themselves. As a talent acquisition team, what we can do is we can put frameworks in place to really structure those conversations and make sure that managers are having these conversations. So we have performance one-on-ones with your manager every month, where to sort of ensure that these conversations are happening, and they're happening sort of in the right way, and that people are getting are able to sort of open up and talk about where they want their career to grow. We've got such a diverse workforce. We are in sort of up to 18 different countries now. It wouldn't make sense for us as a talent team to put career development plans in place for each person. And as Gareth mentioned, we are changing so much as a business. So what someone thought they might want to sort of develop their career into, they've now been exposed over the last 6 months into something completely different and absolutely love it. And, we offer the room for them to grow into a completely different position, and we will do everything we can to support them in that growth. Whether that be literally creating a role for them that bridges between sort of their current role and where they're looking to move into. That's what we really found has been fantastic in motivating employees and really helping them to grow professionally in areas that they maybe didn't know of 6 months ago. And that's one of the sort of best things about working in, you know, a scale up and really having visibility of a lot and being in a smaller team and having a very flat structure, is that you're exposed to so much more.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Isabel, one of the great things that's happened over the last few years is, of course, we've all been introduced in some form to remote and hybrid working. Is something I'm a big advocate of, particularly never more so than right now as a new father. But I think what it's taken away from us, perhaps, is the ease at which we can feel like we're part of something, and we're all in a business together, an office together. You do lose a bit of that camaraderie, but it's a challenging thing. I speak to a lot of businesses who really struggle to make this work. How do you keep the culture when you're not together? Is there anything that your business is doing that's working well to do that, bearing in mind you're obviously international?
Absolutely. And, you know, we scaled sort of throughout and after COVID, so we had no choice but to really embrace this hybrid working. And I wouldn't say we do sort of anything completely unconventional. We do lots of little things that have really helped, and we have got such a fantastic culture because of that. So, I mean, really as simple as making sure that everybody has a photo on their Slack, or in meetings, people always put their cameras on. Like, that sounds ridiculous, but it means that, like, you know, when you're interacting with people, you're actually interacting with them. I know it's not face to face, but sort of to their face rather than just to a blank screen. Regular check-ins for those who are sort of spread far and wide, and really doing sort of any excuse for an in-person meeting, and trying to get people together as much as possible. You know, we have scaled hybrid working. We do everything we can to make sure that people feel, you know, part of the BVNK team, whether they be in the US or in London, sat in an office with everyone. And it's strange because you might not have actually physically met someone who you've been working with for the past year and a half, and then you meet them and you're like, oh, it's nothing, because you feel like you've known them you've met them every single day for the last year and a half. And I really think that is due to sort of putting people's faces out there as much as possible, and really encouraging conversations that aren't necessarily work as well. Like, it's so easy to walk into a meeting and start that meeting minute one just to try and smash it out and get on with everything else you need to do. Like, we've all been there, we've all done that. But really encouraging sort of that first 5 minutes of actually, how are you? How was your weekend? How's your baby? You know, things like that, and really sort of getting to know people on a personal level rather than just a professional level, because you do see the knock-on effects of that as well. You know, people work better together when they know each other personally and professionally rather than just professionally.
100%. Gareth, have you or your business cracked the remote hybrid culture maintaining conundrum?
I like the way you phrase that. So I think a lot of it comes down to especially kind of bringing people together. It really, I think we provide a lot of management training within Tide to be able to give the managers the tools to be able to think about these sort of things and think about ways in which they can bring people together. And even though we might not be with each other in the same room or in the same office, you know, how can we ensure that the culture of the business is still getting manifested across all these different locations? And I think a lot of it comes down to communication, and a lot of it comes back to that open and honest, transparent communication. Not only communication in written format, you know, broadcasting things so that everyone feels included and everyone feels like there's a sense of belonging. But I also think it's, you know, through virtual meetings, you know, having those check-ins with your team members or with folks, whether it's the entire team doing your weekly one-to-ones. But I also think, like, as leaders or managers within a business, also making sure that you are accessible. I think making sure that people can get in touch with you and they can interact with you and interact with other members of the team, and just be more sort of empathetic to someone's situation, especially if they're working remotely in a location where maybe there aren't any other folks in that location. So to answer your question, I mean, have we solved it? No, but there's certainly, I think it comes down to providing the right training for managers to be able to think about these things and try to build the culture or the environment that will allow for everybody to be thinking about these things, thinking about that person who's working remotely, and how can we ensure that they're included through various channels, like I mentioned.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Gareth. Yeah, obviously I loaded that in an unfair way to you, didn't I? But of course, yeah, I think it's a really good point you make, particularly around managers need to be prepared. The role of the manager is so different now to what it was 4 or 5 years ago. What you have to spot, how you have to engage with people, how you need to really look and see if people are all right. So I think it's a really, really good point you made. And Rashad, anything to add your end on this?
Yeah, we've very similar to what Isabel said. We've used Slack, and I think we use Slack to such a degree. So like new joiners join, and we intro them, and they need to give 5 facts. And then we've got like interest groups from like baking to exercise to cat lovers, dog lovers. We've got the kudos channel. We've got the random coffee generator. And it sort of takes on a life of its own. It creates this culture where people are like sharing, I got engaged, I just had my baby, whatever. And it's sort of like, it's from that perspective, but also from our HR system as well. When people come in, we've actually asked them to like list their superpowers. So this would be like, I'm super empathetic, I have a desire to do mentoring, or I'm a marathon runner, etc. So we already pull them up front. So these are the interest groups that might be of interest to you. These are like-minded people as well. And I think we've used that to a degree. I think overall, it's about just getting people to have a voice as quickly as possible, because you don't want them to get lost. And like at one stage, we were like 187 people, and we only met all in person after 18 months of building this when we went live. So it was about actually just getting everyone in. And like I think Isabel said about having the cameras on, it's a huge thing. It's still a challenge for us in certain meetings, and just getting a face to the name and making people feel that they're able to contribute, even if they're not in all of the meetings. So yeah, we've utilized Slack to the nth degree to do this. And then obviously we've looked at other mechanisms for like data sharing and information as well. And just make it as easy as possible for people to navigate. And then we've utilized, for everyone that comes in, they have a dedicated buddy in order to equip them on this digital journey of getting onboarded as well. So we'd have a physical person, and then they have someone directly with them. So they have a virtual person that assists them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the use of things like Slack or Teams is really important for communication. I know a few businesses who have gone so far as to ban emails internally, so as things are kept on those channels. And absolutely, the use of a mentor buddy scheme, Google do it, Apple do it, the big companies do it, and it's known to work. And Rashad, I've got to ask you though, what was your superpower?
Mine said very bad golf player. So
yeah. Thank you for admitting that. Okay, cool. I've got a question that's come in. So pulse surveys are very common across fintechs, but in my experience, not all employers are taking actions on the back of the results and the feedback received. Can you please give some examples of the actions your organizations took on the back of the feedback received from the pulse survey? Yeah, so absolutely. First of all, whilst you three just have a little think for a second there, I'd say these are common across all businesses. I'd say number one, all businesses should have some kind of surveying initiative in the business. But number two, you need to make sure you're demonstrating that you're actually actioning it. Because if you do the survey and you don't display action, then how does that make your people feel? Does it make them feel very, very good? One thing I did, or I had in my previous life in a business I was working at, is one of the things that was picked up on the pulse surveys is that people actually felt that they had to have their cameras on too much. For meetings, and there was a lot of meetings, and actually sometimes when they were actually working, we listened to that and we absolutely turned them off. So that was an action in our business, but it's not for me. Isabel, if I go to you, have you got an example of something that was actioned off the back of the surveys?
Yes, and to be honest, this is such a good point, and I think sort of when a team is super busy and you're fighting fires like left, right, and center, and you're juggling a million balls, like, getting the information is one thing, and then sometimes it is really hard to then take it the next step further and action it. But actually, at the end of the day, that's the most important step, isn't it? So I mentioned earlier about load shedding or power cuts in South Africa. That was the theme on all hands. We then did a survey. Now we're doing the action for that. Like, it's taken longer than we would have liked, but off the back of that, the IT team, the people team, and the finance team were all working together to offer UPSs for our South African staff, and then the amount will be deducted off salaries over an X period of time. So essentially breaking down that payment. What's that doing? It's meaning that our employees can work from home. We are eliminating that barrier. They can work from home without any interruption. They'll have electricity for their Wi-Fi and their devices. They're not having to pay sort of a big lump sum straight up, because we will break that payment down for them and really sort of use that as a benefit for our employees. It has taken us sort of a bit longer, and this gentleman's completely right in that it's one thing doing pulse surveys, and it's another thing actioning on it. The action is the most important thing, and it's something that we are super conscious of at BVNK and try to do it, to the best of our ability. The example I gave was just the most recent one. There's been many sort of different examples that we have done that previously too.
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. And I should add, I think, is that we can't action everything that gets asked in a pulse survey, but I think you need to demonstrate that you've listened and acknowledge it. Acknowledgement is the most important thing here, isn't it?
Just to add to that, Paul, like, I completely agree. And sometimes, what people are asking for isn't possible at all. But as a business, it's our job to really explain and communicate why. And then that really helps people to understand sort of the full process behind that too, because sometimes, when there's no context, it's very easy to jump to a conclusion and think, oh, the business isn't doing enough. But then once given context, and this comes down to transparency as well, once given context, everything's done for a reason. And it's so obvious to see that BVNK really does do everything that they possibly can to provide these things, and will go sort of above and beyond to really try and think of a way to do that. But yeah, you're completely right. If you can't offer it, which you often, can't, it's really about that communication as to why.
Absolutely. Gareth, anything that you've discovered or your business has discovered from these and then action?
Yeah, so one that came to mind was, this was in a previous company that I worked at. One of the results that came through the survey was that given that we had teams kind of located in different regions, there were some teams that felt that they didn't feel that they were as connected together, like as a team, and so the business did a great job in actioning that by actually flying some of us over to that location and getting us to spend a couple of days over there with that team, going through various different workshops, doing a whole bunch of activities together, and really kind of working on building that togetherness and creating that stronger connection between the teams. And I thought that was an example that came to my mind where I thought that was something that at the time was very much needed. And it was very much appreciated that the business had actually recognized that and then put that action in place to be able to do that. And then in the long term, they didn't focus they weren't able to fly everybody constantly, but then the managers of various different teams were able to kind of go and visit teams a lot more often, to ensure that there was that connection and that sense of togetherness. So there was a lot of things that the business started to do to bridge that gap, which was great to see.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gareth. And thanks for the question, Orimus, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. And just a follow-up point rather than a question from Nick, it's also really important to publish the results of the surveys, even if things can't be actioned. Making sure that people feel listened to will boost the engagement rates in any future surveys. Absolutely with that. Thanks, Nick. And then moving on, Rashad, how can talent, people, HR leaders or staff collaborate with other departments within an organisation to create this holistic approach to enhancing employee experience? Because as we know, it doesn't work unless we're all doing it, does it? So how do we do that?
Yeah, I think it's about knowing the business inside and out, from a tech perspective, from an ops perspective, from a product perspective. I mean, you've got to know exactly what are the challenges in each of those areas. Because if you speak from a business perspective, and I'm not just saying like if you speak from an HR perspective, it discounts it. But I always say, for me and my team, we need to know that business inside and out, because whatever we're doing ultimately needs to meet the business needs as well as also meet our people needs. So for me, it's about the business acumen.
Thank you very much for that. And Isabel, I mean, this is down to good stakeholder management as well, I guess. But what for you stands out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just to sort of add to what Rashad said, each department, each team has its own sort of pain points and blockers and things that they're struggling with, whether it be, some teams might be struggling with having to work long hours, and some teams might be struggling with the pressure of a few of those hours. And it's really about sort of, offering the space for people of all different teams and departments to really come forward and sort of identify what those are and be, have that space to be open about it. Sort of going forward, and then so that we as a team can really identify what we need to do going forward to really address those issues and really help the team out. But I think, Rashad's completely right. You have to know the business inside out. I don't know how realistic that is sometimes when the business is growing quite quickly. Often things can get missed. So I think what really is important is to make sure that your employees feel like they can come forward. And if there is something that they've missed, that, it's not going to get swept under the carpet, that it will be addressed. And, you've always got someone to chat to and someone who's going to have your back and try and sort it out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Gareth, anything to add on that?
Yeah, just I guess another example for people to take away, and this kind of this comes off the back of what Rashad was saying earlier about competency frameworks is a great example. So like when teams are, especially if you're in a scaling business and you're building out new departments and you're building out new teams, you may need to build out these competency frameworks from scratch. That's a great example of where HR talent partners can really go and help and collaborate with that department, ensuring that you're building competency frameworks that are a reflection of what the skill set is in the market, and that you, by setting out that competency framework, you're setting all the employees up for success. So that's just another example I wanted to give for folks to kind of take away where they can collaborate with HR and talent partners.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for sharing that. We've got another question that's come up. So I'll read it as I go. So what is your experience of introducing coaching to address challenges highlighted from engagement surveys? Did you ever want to introduce more coaching at a larger scale, but experience barriers in doing so from the business? That's from Paul Quinn. Rashad, I'll go to you on that. Any thoughts on that one?
We've had mixed experience of this. It works for some people and it doesn't work for some people as well. So yeah, we give people the latitude to choose what they want from a developmental perspective. So if they're wanting coaching, they're more than welcome to do it. The problem has come in terms of time commitment and seeing it through as well. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. I think what we've done more is we've done mentoring internally to sort of build that capacity. But yeah, coaching externally, I don't know if it's just because we've been so busy scaling, we haven't really had the chance to fully embed it. But yeah, we've had mixed results so far.
No worries, thanks for sharing that. Gareth, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, in my experience, I've been where I've seen the company introduce external coaching is often with regards to like management or leadership training. But as Rashad said, it can be mixed results because it can be positive from the point of view that this external person is coming in and they don't have any biased opinion on how the business is run. So you're able to talk and they can obviously coach you in that respect, but that's also a negative in the sense that they don't necessarily have the context about what's going on within the business to really kind of coach effectively. So there's been some positive instances, but also some not so effective. I should say there's been effective cases, but then not so effective. So very similar.
With it. And then Isabel, anything to add on that one?
This isn't actually something that we've done. It's something that we've been taught. It's been a hot topic conversation for a while now. I think maybe the reason why we have sort of been hesitant to pull the trigger and actually go ahead and do this is we are wanting 100% sort of like full buy-in from all managers to and I think that's the only way that you're going to really make the most out of that is that if every single person wants to be there and is ready to sort of like put 2 days aside and really crack on and get on with it. At the moment we have just been too busy as a business. Like we can't afford for our managers to sort of take 2 days off and do sort of go for coaching. And I know that's probably quite a short-term vision. Long term is actually would be helping our employees a lot more, but we just haven't had the time, to be completely honest. And I think we're waiting to have full buy-in, to have sort of a few more management staff so we can sort of do it in shifts. But yeah, it's definitely something thought of, not something we managed to do quite yet.
Of course, thank you so much for that. Thanks for the question, Paul. And then final question, I'm conscious we're getting close to the hour, and I'm a sucker for shiny things and pieces of software and technology, so much to the dismay of my business partners, I'm always saying, let's try this or let's buy this, whatever. Isabel, I'll stay with you on this one. Which technology and digital tools help optimize employee experience for you? What are the ones that you must-haves?
Yes, it's a very good question. So when I joined sort of 2 years ago, we didn't have any tools. Like everything was done off Google Sheets. It was very chaotic. I'm sure we've all been there, of just sort of doing what you can with sort of very, very little. And over the last 2 years, we've gradually sort of added to the platforms that we use, whether it be an ATS, which we use Greenhouse, which now I don't know how we would survive without, or whether we use an HR system, which we use HiBob. Again, I don't know how we ever functioned without it. These things, we're slowly adding to what we have. I mean, someone who joins the business now, they're like, why don't you have an app like Culture Amp or something? And it's important to note that we're getting there. Like, we are sort of doing one thing at a time. When there's a need, we definitely look for what we can do to address that need. At the moment, we're still very basic with what we offer. We have, we don't necessarily feel that sort of big shiny platforms are going to be the solution to our problems. We've actually found that like the most basic things have helped us the most. Like I can give actually 2 great examples of this. Our CEO Jesse, he puts out a weekly update every week via email of exactly like what's been going on in his week. What his priorities are, where his focus has been, what he's going to focus on going forward. There's a personal update there, and it really does give us such a good insight into what he's doing. And that's an email. You don't need a platform for that. And then the other thing that we use is really we have a blog of all of our sort of at the moment we're just focusing on executives, and then we'll sort of focus on managers, and then sort of so on. And that really gives us a good idea of, getting to know key players in the business personally and professionally. Again, that's done sort of via email and HiBob, so no sort of big shiny platform for that either. And those 2 things have made the world of difference to our business, and really, transparency again, but communication, really understanding and knowing our executives. So yeah, I mean, I would say, when times are tight, and they are at the moment, times are tight and businesses are trying to think of what they can do in order to offer employees, things to retain talent and increase employee experience. It doesn't always necessarily mean spending money on platforms. It can be as simple as an email, but it really does entail buy-in from executives and sort of, key members of your staff to really keep everyone in the loop.
Thank you, Isabel. Rashad, any tools, any shiny things you have to live with?
I think for me, HiBob has changed our lives as a company. It's made onboarding so seamless, and in essence, it's automated. We've even gone down to the level of automating payroll through it. Our ATS, we use Lever, comes through. But yeah, I think HiBob has been our biggest game changer. I can't imagine working without it now. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, mate. And Gareth?
Also a big fan of HiBob, so I'll just throw that out there. But one of the tools that I think is worth shouting out is a tool called Lattice, which we're currently using at Tide, which has actually been really awesome. It's great for performance management, but also for building that culture of feedback and recognition, because you're able to kind of automate surveys that kind of get released through Lattice, and also use it to kind of keep track of your one-to-ones with everybody in your team. So like as your team grows and you get a really massive team with a lot of people reporting into you, it can be sometimes difficult to keep track of conversations and things like that. Lattice is really great for that. It's also good for when you are doing your mid-year reviews or your annual reviews. It automates all of the review forms that go out to manager, employee, but then also to other colleagues who can submit feedback with regards to that person's performance. So Lattice is one that I think is good to shout out.
Yeah, and with that, I was shown Lattice just a week ago, actually, and I'm all for it. Really good, looks really good for feedback and performance management. I don't think my business partner will let us get it because we're only 3 people in the business, so we probably don't need a feedback tool. We can just kind of tell each other. But anyway, that's it. We've got just 1 minute past the hour. Thank you so much, you three, for sharing your experience and expertise today. Thank you for listening and viewing today, or listening on the podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to get it right with stakeholders. Candidates want everything, well, guess what? So do stakeholders as well. So we're going to talk about how to manage those. But yeah, please do follow the Anemo group to stay up to date with all the events we've got coming up. We've got something every week. But yeah, thank you to our 3 speakers again, and I'll see everyone next week.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.